Destiny and Kim opened the text 2 weeks ago, and they took us to the upper room. And as Jesus sat down to the Passover feast, he was surrounded by familiar faces, but really he was alone in a crowded room. One of you is going to betray me, and all of you are going to desert me. To strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. I see a man surrounded by people, but experiencing feelings of isolation and abandonment. I see loneliness. Adrian and Dan opened the text last week, and they took us to the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus takes his 3 closest allies to a corner of the garden, and he asks them to pray with him. And he needs to feel supported now. He needs to feel lifted up at this point more than at any other point in his life to date. But they keep falling asleep, letting him down. Can you not stay awake with me for 1 hour? I see loneliness. Jesus is then arrested and interrogated and condemned by the high priest, by the elders, by the scribes, by the leaders of Israel. He has no lawyer. He has no advocate. He has no friend by his side. There is no one with him. I see loneliness. He's then passed into the hands of the civic authorities, first of all Pilate, and then passed on to Herel, and they examine him. They have him beaten and flogged, even though they find no fault in him, and they do it again. He's sentenced to be crucified. And there is no one for him. I see loneliness. He's then made to carry his cross to a place outside of the city walls. Depending on your language, some call it Golgotha, some call it Calvary. It's the same place. And he's hoisted up on that cross and he's crucified. And he alone has to carry the weight of the sin of the world on his shoulders. I cannot imagine a deeper, darker picture of loneliness. But at points along this journey, that loneliness is punctuated by inflections of camaraderie and affinity and connection. Because while Jesus is carrying the old rugged cross, and while he's buckling under its weight, Simon of Cyrene enters the story, and he takes the weight of the cross, giving Jesus just kind of the briefest glimmer of respite. Somebody is with him. And this group of unnamed, unrecognized women, they walk alongside him, they're weeping, they're crying out in anguish, they're empathizing with his plight. Someone's with him. And while he is on his cross, there is somebody else next to him, also on another cross, advocating for him. Do you not fear God? Justifying him. This man has done nothing wrong. Believing in him. Remember me when you get into your kingdom. Someone is with him. The people who were meant to be there for him, the ones who you expect to be there, they weren't there. His blood brothers, his actual blood, flesh and blood brothers, were conspicuous by their absence. His friends have deserted him. The state has condemned him. But then these people, with whom he has no previous or prior connection, they come into his life. Simon of Cyrene, these weeping women, and the thief on the cross. And the only connection that he has with any of these people is that when he was following God, they were also following God. If they weren't seeking after God in some manner, they don't enter the story. They don't enter his story. But because they were seeking God, people who should have been strangers became allies. Loneliness encountered love. As I look out at all of the faces that are gathered here in this room, other than my mother and my sister, the only reason that we came into each other's lives, the only reason that we have any form of interconnectedness, the only reason that our paths have crossed and we even met one another, is that when you were seeking God, I was seeking God. And when I was trying to follow God, you were trying to follow God. And that same motive, at some point in our history, brought us to the same place at the same time. Because that's actually what the church is. It's strangers who are brought into communion because they're seeking God. And then they cease to be strangers. They become like family. They become like relatives because of that common motive. You see, it was after the resurrection that Jesus established the power of the church. But it was before the resurrection that Jesus experienced the power of the church. When people, simply following God, entered into his life when he was most lonely, so that he wasn't alone. That's the power of the cross. Loneliness is real. Some of us have experienced breakdowns in friendships or relationships, and we feel it. Some of us are in relationships, in marriages even, and we feel it. Some of us have moved here from different cities or different counties or even different countries, and we feel it. Some of us are just tired of waiting for that person, for that partner, for that spouse, and we feel it. Some of us maybe look like we're happy on the outside, but on the inside, we feel it. Different shades of loneliness. And Jesus gets that. Jesus really gets that. Because when he was on the cross on that Friday afternoon, the whole world turned its back on him. And that wasn't even the worst thing that happened to him that day. Because even worse than that, when he was on the old rugged cross, God the Father turned his back on him. Not because he hated him, but because he loved us. And somebody had to be cut off from God the Father in order to pay the price of sin. And so Jesus was the one. He took upon his shoulders the ultimate loneliness that should be ours. The ultimate loneliness, which is separation from God. The ultimate loneliness, God turning his back. Jesus took the ultimate loneliness that should be ours, and it crushed him. But what loneliness destroys, love revives. What loneliness steals, love repays. What loneliness killed on Friday, love resurrected on Sunday. He is God alone, but now he isn't lonely. He says, I stand at the door of your heart and I knock, and if you hear and let me come in, I will come in and sup with you, because he doesn't want you to be lonely ever. He'll be with you. Back in the upper room, during this Passion Week where loneliness first began to show its hand, Jesus said to his followers, in the future, I want you to meet together and take some bread and take some wine and eat it and drink it together. And he said that because he wanted to give them, and by extension us, a gift. It was an act that you cannot enjoy by yourself. Something that you can only do when you're with somebody else who is also seeking God. Something you can only do when you're with somebody else who is also following God. It's a constant reminder that no matter how alone you may feel, as long as you have a church, you are never alone in this world. You are never by yourself. Jesus felt loneliness so that you can feel loved. The only reason that I know you and you know me is because we were both seeking God. That's the only reason. So these emblems here are super simple. It's nothing fancy. It's a small piece of wafer, some grape juice. These emblems remind us that we belong to God. But they're also meant to remind us that we belong to each other.